There's a lot of things in different places on the ground. Over here. Oh, okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name's Kara Goot, and this is my show called Escape, or Esque, I guess, as I've been calling it in my head. Maybe we should start by, I want to talk about this sort of as like the central touchstone of everything in the room. This video is called Basic Bitch Bath, and it uses LaCroix as the cleansing bath. It's supposed to sort of be a joke, thinking about LaCroix as this lifestyle substance, and also as this like cleansing purity, because it's pure, the flavor is pure, and thinking a lot about us as consumers, and specifically me as a consumer and as an artist, and the tools that I have been using as both consumer and as a simplified version of like the tools that I should be using. So in this video, I used iMovie. I'm using LaCroix instead of like an elevated type of water or something that's supposed to like signify baptism. It's sort of this consumer, like lowbrow baptism, but also with LaCroix, there's this accompanying aspirational quality. So like the type of lifestyle that you want to have, in terms of like this carefree, tropical beach type lifestyle that sort of accompanies it, and also maybe like healthy or like faux healthy lifestyle that comes along with the advertisement of LaCroix. And you can kind of see that echoed in that piece behind Claire. It's sort of riffing on that same idea of the constructed aspirational lifestyle that goes along with the brand. And it's sort of, LaCroix to me is like this catch-all representation of the aspirational lifestyle. And I sort of riff on that in this video as well, where I'm using stock footage, but it's Adobe stock footage, so it's sort of this like elevated quality stock photo, and yet I'm just taking the preview of it. I'm not actually buying it. It's still in its very like previewed form, and just like the knowledge that it's a stock image or a stock video and not something that I've taken myself. It's obviously taken from a website or from like a gallery or like a database of all of the same imagery. So a lot of people I guess had questions about the tropical theme, and that again sort of like feeds into the whole constructed lifestyle, or the constructing of lifestyle, and the idea of like trying to make something elevated when it's not, or trying to make your personal brand elevated in a way. And that sort of feeds into the whole theme of escape, like escaping reality in terms of like the digital and internet lifestyle, escaping reality through brands and through advertisement, and how the internet is sort of like this thoroughfare for that. So when you think of the internet, like traditionally we've thought of like escaping reality by going somewhere that is like where we can't reach physically with our bodies, but actually we're, instead of facing or experiencing this escape, we're facing things that we already are facing in our real lives, like anxiety, fear, oppression. That's all happening, maybe even more magnified on the internet and in social media spaces. I know for me, like just in general, like it gives me a lot of anxiety, like to be on a social media platform, and yet it's this idea that we're escaping some like reality to be in this digital space. So it's like this tension between the two worlds and sort of this false sense of escape. And so that's kind of really what I was trying to bring together in this show, the idea of advertisement, of branding, and of the internet being this this representation of, or like a meeting place for all of that to come together, and how we embrace that as an idea of escape, but really we're just being blasted with imagery and with advertisement constantly. And especially with this piece, this is called Surface Tension, and I wanted to draw the tension between that experience that we have on the internet and the constant surveillance that occurs in tandem with that. So data mining, or a situation where, you know, a website, you'll go to a website and then on Facebook it gives you advertisements for that website for like the next 4 months. So the constant like watching of what you're consuming and the constant giving back to you what they think you want. And so that's sort of kind of how I wanted to frame the whole show. So if anyone has any questions about specific pieces, I know I didn't talk about everything, but any comments, maybe? It's okay if you don't. What else did I miss? Oh, yeah. So these, I've been making a lot of paintings. I call them green screen paintings, but in this case I made a few blue screen paintings. Basically, I take paint that you would typically use to make a green screen wall, or like to key out things if you're in like video or video production. And sort of like, I've been printing out inkjet photos and pasting them onto these boards and sort of creating these weird collages that are supposed to be these derelict, like broken down green screens or blue screens, and sort of like these imaginary, like what if someone were to try and key things out in this way, or what if someone was trying to create imagery that they could key themselves into, and then what that would look like if it went wrong. And so these are called reflecting pools, sort of like this reflection on how we place ourselves on the internet or in a digital space, and how it could go wrong, and our expectations versus the reality of what actually happens. So, yeah. Anything else I should talk about?
Well, I'm curious about the LaCroix, and like its place in hipster culture, you know, and so you talk about it in terms of aspirational culture, but I guess I wonder about it as a really specific signifier for, like, there's even the, you know, the joke about just saying LaCroix or LaCroix, and, you know, the pamplemousse version, you know, like all the different flavored versions, and so there's a sense in which it's even more specific than the way you talk about it in your opening.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting that you should bring that up, because I specifically wanted to use LaCroix because it has some sort of like subculture within like a potentially mainstream idea. So I think like hipster culture is pretty mainstream at this point, and it's all about finding something that people haven't used or like been aware of, and then capitalizing on the fact that no one is aware of it. But in this case, like everyone is aware of LaCroix, like everyone is like buying it from Kroger. It's very readily available. It's like, and it has like the French name, whereas like its counterpart, Faygo, is also a thing that I was thinking about before the creation of the LaCroix pieces, and thinking about how that has a subculture and that is very like not mainstream, and how they're like the same parent company. And so basically the two beverages have these like wildly different connotations to them. And sort of thinking about what makes something mainstream subculture, and what when something's just subculture, and what is attractive about this LaCroix versus the Faygo, or what's attractive about this to make it mainstream, or make it, just more attractive and appropriated sort of out of this hipster culture into like, you know, how like the pumpkin spice latte is like of a mainstream culture, and yet it has like some strange subculture that began it, but it's still like a mainstream brand. So just sort of playing with that, that relationship a little bit. I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure. But yeah. Anyone have any other questions? Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, I was taking a minute to sort of collect my thoughts about it, but it just seems like to me one of the sort of interesting things that maybe LaCroix does is, I don't know, I was thinking about Shannon Moulton's videos, and I was thinking about the way she uses like crystal light and stuff as a like signifier for New Age. And I see some of that impulse in here, but the signifiers are really different because they're much more contemporary. It doesn't feel like dated 80s references.
Right.
And so I guess I was trying to think out whether or not there's some kind of thing around LaCroix and the cultures that consume it that is a kind of contemporary counterpart to like what she finds in New Age, and I don't know, I'm still like, again, having trouble articulating it, but it does seem like that's something different.
Yeah, no, totally. Basically, yes. That makes a lot of sense. And sort of just using a physical beverage or a brand as like a way to talk about how we are interacting with like digital space or like internet space, because I know that there are a lot of like even like vaporwave elements in the things that I'm making, except it's not, I don't like subscribe to the vaporwave like aesthetic, but sort of like the palm trees, the like references to brands in like an ironic way, I think has a lot to do with what I'm thinking about, and I'm sort of also like commenting on that a little bit. Just purely like the aesthetics of a highly consumed brand and the way that it sort of becomes like an echo chamber for like our experience with products, you know, like, I don't know if that makes sense, but there's something about LaCroix that it just keeps, it's the gift that keeps giving for me. But yeah, it sounds like very similar to the Crystal Light, you know, video, but also like in this new, like sort of hyper consumed culture, if that makes sense. So.
It seems to reflect the way spirituality has kind of gotten integrated into consumerism.
Yeah.
You mentioned pure, and then this, you know, I think that there's this, you know, even the way sometimes we talk about things like the internet seem to be somehow metaphysical, and you know, there's this kind of, you know, like things live forever, and
Right.
and somehow capitalism and the internet have sort of combined to become our new afterlife, or
immortality.
spiritual planes.
Yeah, and sort of that, the anxiety of like, it will not end, you know, it could go on forever. It's sort of like this, it's this heightened echo chamber of all of that happening. That's something that I like think about a lot and when I'm making this type of work, so.
And it both justifies our existence and like creates guilt.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, religion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Is there sound?
Oh yeah, there's sound. I have headphones if people want to take turns. There's 3 headphones. I think that at least 2 of them have power. I think maybe the batteries ran out on a few of them, but okay,
this morning, but
cool.
The volume is low on all of them.
Oh, well, there's like a channel button that maybe we need to fix. Like it's a radio transmitter, so it might be a little bit. It depends. Different spaces react differently to the headphones, but I also like using headphones for video pieces like this because in like not just letting it kind of fill the space, because it sort of mirrors the way that we consume like audio, specifically like in a home environment or a work environment. The headphones are really, really intimate and kind of like are the way that at least I experience like audio or any like music in like my home or at work. So podcasts even.
Well, karaoke becomes like a huge reference with the sound.
For sure, yeah. The karaoke is definitely a thing. It was inspired by, I did a residency in Banff, Canada, and there wasn't very much to do there. It was really beautiful, but like just in general, like the town was very small. It's a touristy town, and there was this karaoke bar there, and we went and this girl was singing Summertime Sadness as a karaoke song. It's actually really, really difficult to sing, and it's kind of terrible. Like I kind of like, I'm not a great singer, but like this was really hard. And so that aesthetic of like the girl that listens to Lana Del Rey, what is that like, what does that mean? What does that say about you as like a woman consumer wanting to sing Lana Del Rey in a bar in Banff? So that was like an inspiration for the karaoke aesthetic.
I can't help but to think also, like, what role does the residency play for, like, the current art world and the current art economy as a sort of, like, magical place where things are supposed to happen?
Yeah. It was, there was a lot of pressure to, like, create at a residency. It was my only residency I've done. And I felt a lot of pressure of, like making connections and making work, and actually just feeling burnt out at a residency was sort of another thing that inspired the making of this video. Like the feeling that my ideas, like in this video I say, I'm giving you a bath because your ideas are just simplified, your materials are simplified, and you're just repeating the same things that other people are repeating. You're not making anything new, you're not innovating. And so that's like really how I felt there, and how I feel like a lot of the time, and I know a lot of other artists feel this way too, the way that we're recycling media and recycling and appropriating like mainstream brands in our work. Like I know that there are a lot of painters that paint LaCroix, or sculptures of LaCroix. Like I know that that's a thing. And I was sort of also like commenting on all that, like the art world needing to be more innovative and more careful in our appropriation and more aware, I guess. So, yeah.
I think I can really grasp your sense of color in the show, like the color theory happening. It's very pared down. It's almost like a kind of, it's almost like it kind of comes from like an engineering kind of.
You think? Yeah.
It becomes poetic with the subjective, like the way it's used to talk about identity. But I think that's, I guess you just grasp that because the green trees and the sea and use of like liquids and liquid crystal displays. Seems like there's a kind of rhythm between the content and the color.
Yeah, I didn't want to like reach too far with the color palettes. I was thinking about like doing a lot more green screen stuff, and I was like, no, I need to just, pare it down to something as if it were an advertisement, and consistently like one brand sort of, and using water or sparkling water as like the brand. So, because even this is waves, but like thinking of like the blue water, not like the beach in reality, but the beach of like the internet. Like when you Google beach scene, it's this very, very blue water, and so that's sort of what I was riffing off of in all of these.
Is there a place in your thinking about your work for like real desire? I was thinking as I biked here and it was miserably cold, coming in here and seeing all these sort of tropical things, or thinking about you in Canada, right, in advance.
Yeah.
You know, this is like the opposite end of the planet or whatever. And yeah, so I guess I wonder, like, yeah, I see all the ironizing and the critical relationship, but I wonder, like, is there a real desire in here too, or like how does that figure in the way you think about the work?
Yeah, it's interesting because before this series and sort of like when I was in grad school like a few years ago, I was making a lot of work that was about intimacy and desire and like how that becomes canned when it's in a virtual space. It becomes like almost a joke of itself. How can you be intimate in a space that is so constantly trying to make you like just detach from any emotions specifically, and yet they're still there. So like this back and forth between like being intimate with like people online that you don't even know, or things online, or things in like a MMORPG, you know what I mean? Like just all of that almost misplaced desire is like very interesting to me. Like when desire sort of becomes like aimed in a really specific, interesting way. Like I was doing a lot of work about fetish online before this, but yeah, that definitely like plays into a lot of my interests. So yeah, desire is always something I'm thinking about. Maybe not real in real life though. You know what I mean? Like this, yeah.
The internet does. I was having a conversation with a friend last night who is on. She's taking an online, like guided meditation class, right? Which totally seems weird.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a corporate Skype call or something. Like we have like a creative people, and the whole thing is sort of also supposed to make you think about equality and like tolerance and all these things. So there's these sort of guided subjects that they go through, and because of that, the audience or all the participants tended to introduce themselves with all these sort of like self-identifying labels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she said it got really weird. Like people are now like identifying with like well, I'm polyamorous, and like, you know, like this kind of like extreme almost sort of like self-identification.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking about like how this and what you're talking about in terms of desire points to this like new space or burgeoning space where maybe, you know, is it true desire or not? Like how do we occupy this online space when we're trying to engage in these like very intimate experiences?
Yeah, I think that's interesting what you said about self-identifying, because I think on the internet or, you know, in a digital space, like that's all that defines you really, because you don't have like a physical form, or you may have like an avatar or something, but what defines you are your identifications. And so that in itself, like being sure about who you are kind of solidifies you as like a solid being in that space, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's really interesting in the way that we're like having to become so sure about who we are, because if not, then we'll like be eaten alive by the internet, I guess, in a sense. And like just hurrying up and figuring out like this is who I am is like, I think because of being online and how we interact with that space. Cool. Yeah, thank you.